Hey, winter. Nice. This will be a good pick for my summer read.
Welcome to Keep It Fictional, a weekly podcast for book lovers by book lovers. Build your to-be-read list with Sadie, Liz, Virginia, Fiona, and Corrine from the Port Moody Public Library. Warning, this podcast contains strong opinions and may cause an increase in your library holds list.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Keep It Fictional with the Port Moody Public Library. I'm here with my book friends Sadie and Corrine. All right, we are continuing our most anticipated books for this coming season, books that are coming out from May to August in 2025. So last week we introduced 6 books to you, and today we have a few more to go. Before we start, because this is sort of the summer season, Sadie and my least favorite season, and I guess is Corrine's favorite. I don't know.
I finally am warm. I love summer. You feel alive in the summer. You can feel life coursing through your veins, the sun on your face, the wind in your hair. The heavy, humid air weighing you down so that you don't want to move or do anything. Yeah, like a weighted blanket giving you comfort.
A weighted blanket is only good because it's like cold outside. This is like a weight when it is like weight already. Like you're just adding more weight. There is such thing as too much weight.
No, I would like to be swaddled. Swaddled.
Okay, all right, sure. Yeah, you're on your own. Since, like we all have different feelings about summer, I'd love to know from my book friends, is that a specific type of books that you prefer to read in the summer? Are there books that matches that weighted vibe that you love so much or you hate so much about summer? Like, what is your summer reading taste like? Does it change from the rest of the season?
I think I've mentioned this before, and this is not entirety, like not all of the books that I read, but I will sometimes try to read books that take place in the winter to try and imagine and pretend like I'm not sitting in a puddle of my own sweat, being very, very uncomfortable. But apart from that, I feel like for me, and I think probably a lot of people would agree, kind of lighter when it's sunny outside. I'm not too inclined to read something very dark and heavy. So kind of lighter, funner things. I think I'm like the opposite of that, Sadie. I find the summer is the only time that I can tackle like really angsty, darker, horror, more emotionally evocative stuff because the weather is so nice. So even if like internally I am feeling a little bit more down because the sun is so beautiful, then I can go outside and take a walk and kind of like feel refreshed. Whereas if I'm doing that in the fall, I look outside and it's dark and I'm like, ugh, I cannot continue.
I understand 0 words that you just said. I don't get it. Anyway, I don't think I have any differences. If I can get myself to reading, like Sadie said, because you're just like drowning in your own pool of sweat, if I can get myself to actually do something and pick up a book, I think it's the same for me. I don't really have any particular preferences or changes in terms of what I read. So yeah, not quite affected by the season as much. But yes, I know that a lot of readers do have specific things that they prefer to read during those gross, sunny days. Anyway, but the books that we will be talking about today are maybe the books that we will be reading this summer. We claim we wanted to read them, so when they come out, maybe we will pick those up. And what would one of those books be, Corrine?
So fair. All right. Yeah, one of the things that I am willing to do in the summer is pick up a thriller. I'm not a huge thriller reader. I love a mystery. I love a traditional mystery. I love a cozy mystery. I love a locked room mystery. But I don't really love thrillers because I always find them like slightly not satisfying, because half the fun of the thriller is trying to like figure out the twist at the end. And either you didn't figure it out and it's
very, very kind of like it fizzles out at the end, or you figure it out too early and then it becomes a little bit too boring to read through the rest of it. However, it's summer, so I'm willing to give things a chance because even if it's disappointing, again, I can go out and take a walk, maybe get an iced coffee, maybe like look at the leaves, hear the creak of the trees, see a bird, nice things. So I am willing to give a thriller a chance. And so this is the thriller that I'm willing to take a chance on. It is, again, another South Korean book in translation. So, it kind of checks some other boxes. This one is called A Twist of Fate by Se-Ah Jang, translated by S.L. Park, come out on July 29th, 2025. Setup is like classic thrillery nonsense in a good way. And it involves a train. So if you love a train-based thriller, then it's really for you. There's a very specific subset out there. So our protagonist, Jae-young, has just left everything she has known behind. She has a horrible job. She has a horrible apartment. She has an abusive, horrible boyfriend who is dead on the kitchen floor. This isn't exactly how she figured that she would be leaving town, but, needs must. She's left it really all behind. And so she is making her way from a train to Seoul out of the city in the hopes that she will be able to escape the long hand of the law and the shadows that haunt her. On the scene, she strikes up a conversation with a very chatty woman who is fleeing with her infant son from an unfaithful husband. And as they're chatting, she's hoping to be able to kind of find refuge and solace and find a little safety with her in-laws. However, she's never met these in-laws, so she's a little bit apprehensive. And when she kind of starts talking, Jae-young kind of like finds this a little bit too much, so she excuses herself for a moment to just kind of get away from this woman's constant chatter. However, when she comes back to her seat, she finds only the child with a note on it that says, "Hey, if you could just take this child to the in-laws, that would be great." And so instead of calling the authorities, because she does not want to call any attention to herself, she decides to comply with this woman's wish. She picks up the infant son and she stops for a little pit stop at the in-laws. However, when she arrives, the house is really nice. It's quite opulent. The food is good. There's the finest luxuries. It's the kind of place that she had never imagined that she could step foot in. And when she shows up with the child, the in-laws just assume that she is their daughter-in-law and invite her to stay. Now, what does she do but kind of shrug her shoulders and say, "Yep, I'm your daughter-in-law. Nothing could possibly go wrong in this situation." And so she decides to just ride out. However, the house isn't what it seems, complications, hidden identities. The description says she is unaware of the rot lurking behind the shiny veneer of her life, and she will do whatever it takes to make sure she never goes back. I love an outlandish situation. This is ridiculous. Like, how does she think this is going to go? Like, no one's going to look at a wedding picture, or the philandering husband is not going to show up at some point, or like the fact that she has this tiny baby. Like, maybe think about it for 2 seconds, but obviously that's not what a thriller is for. This is for brain turn off, enjoyment go in. So we're going to see what happens. So I'm very excited for this thriller. Again, it comes out in July. I think if you're looking for kind of like a very fun, silly premise, but that's what a thriller is for. That's possibly going to keep you on the edge of your seat. We'll see. Then you could probably enjoy A Twist of Fate, which I really had to go digging through because there's a million books called A Twist of Fate. Just like throw an exclamation point on it or something. Anyways, all right. That's my thriller. Sadie, who hates the summer. What is your number 3 top pick?
I have a question to ask you first, Corinne. In past times, and maybe this has changed, but I thought you don't like the outdoors.
Oh, no. I hate the outdoors, but I love the walk from house to cafe.
Okay.
That's the outdoors that I'm talking about. We're not like talking like hiking tree or like birds or flowers or like flora, fauna in a natural sense.
Well, I was confused because you talked about like the trees and the birds. And so I was a little confused about
trees and the birds from my house on the way to the cafe that I'm going to go sit in.
In the city.
Vancouver is a beautiful city.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so in the city. No, I mean, like, I agree with you. Like that part. Yeah. That's the nature that you are interested in.
The only nature I'm interested in. No. I want to be able to like see. I'm on a sidewalk.
See buildings, buildings behind those trees, and the birds that are hanging out on the roofs. Yeah.
These are the ornamental sparrows. They're like accustomed to human life, not the wild ones. No.
Okay, it's a good clarification. Thank you. For my number 3 pick, it is not a book that is fully in my wheelhouse. It is an author that I've read before, who I actually read for our cozy. I can't remember if it was just cozy books or cozy fantasy books or what the topic was, but I read it for that episode and then realized that Virginia had already talked about it. Don't think you liked it, but I really did. And so when I found out that this author had another kind of cozy romance fantasy book coming out, I decided that it sounded really sweet and really kind of a fun little nice warm book, very light. So this is A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping by Sangu Mandanna, the author of The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, which I don't think is a book that I don't think Virginia enjoyed, which knowing the book, I can understand that. Knowing the book and knowing Virginia, I can see where those two might not meld so well. But this is set to be a whimsical and heartwarming novel about a witch who has a second chance to get her magical powers back. So it follows Sarah Swan. And Sarah used to be one of the most powerful witches in Britain. And then she made kind of an impulsive and maybe not the best decision in the world to resurrect her great aunt, Jasmine. Great Aunt Jasmine had not been dead for that long. Still, because of the resurrection, it caused Sarah to lose most of her magic. She has now, strangely enough, befriended a semi-villainous talking fox, which I'm excited about. Because of the resurrection, she was exiled from her guild. So she is now slightly reluctantly, quite grumpily, helping her aunt run an enchanted inn where there are quirky guests, lots of shenanigans, lots of weird things going on. Obviously, her talking fox is there as well, which she has to control. And she works at this inn and dreams about a future that may not be possible anymore. But then she finds a spell, an old spell, may be able to bring back the life that she had and powers with it. But in comes Luke Larson. Luke is handsome and a magical historian, quite a cold, not very nice magical historian, and he obviously arrives on a dark winter night. Hey, winter, nice. This will be a good pick for my summer read. And he might be able to help Sarah unlock the spell and figure out how she can get her powers back. But unfortunately, Luke has no interest in getting involved. He has no interest in helping Sarah. He has no interest in figuring out how this is going to work. So Sarah has to try and break down his walls to get him to help her, to get him to thaw, as the description says, so that she can maybe recover the life that she thought that she was going to have and lost, and maybe find love along the way. So yes, this is a very typical cozy fantasy romance book. As I said, I really enjoyed the first one. There's not a lot of kind of heavy, deep things going on in this one. It's going to be a very light read, probably some pretty silly stuff going on, some pretty quirky characters, which I think that combined with the fact that it takes place in the winter is going to be a perfect summer read for me. And I'm very excited. This one comes out on July 15th, so probably right as we're gearing up to the hotter part of the summer. This might be a nice one for me to try and cool down with. So that is A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping. So I'm guessing, Virginia, this one was not on your list. Which book is on your list next?
I so wish Sangu Mandanna would just go back to her YA fantasy. Those were so great. I flew through those ones and then I read this one. And I also have to, on the podcast, say the words grumpy sunshine trope on there. I remember. Yeah, it was painful. Anyway, I do like a talking fox, but not enough for me to pick this up, probably. Well, anyway. All right. So another genre that I'm not like a huge fan of is historical fiction. I don't think I like it. I like always find that that's not for me. However, there is one author that has shown me that there's a very specific subset. Just like when Corinne was talking about the train thrillers, I have a thing about things set on trains. So train thrillers aren't great, but there's a very specific subset of historical fiction that I really do enjoy. And that is the kind of stories that really imagine real life figures that is this really intensive like character study that you feel like you're really into their like thoughts and feelings, and they're very often like larger than life, and there's always some sort of satirical sardonic thing going on there. And those are the type of historical fiction that I actually quite like and I will seek out. And there are a couple coming out this season. And the author that I can credit with like kind of enlightening me that there is actually some historical fiction, just like everything else, there is a type of books for all of us, is Alvaro Enrique, a author from Mexico. He wrote Sudden Death and he also wrote You Dream of Empires that I kind of talk about both on the show before. And I love his work dearly. So I did look for something kind of like that this season. And the one that caught my eye is a book from New Directions, probably one of my favorite publisher at the moment. It is called We Are Green and Trembling by Gabriela Cabezón Cámara, and it's translated by Robin Myers from Spanish into English, and they're both new to me author and a translator. This is a story based on what, according to Wikipedia, this person is known as the nun lieutenant. So a shout out to Fiona with the nuns here. And the person's name is called Antonio de Arauso. He lives in the 17th century. And the book opens with him writing a letter to his aunt from America. His aunt runs a convent where he spends his first about 15 years of his life there. He was supposed to be trained as a nun. He is pretty sure that his aunt was going to give the convent to him, but he escaped. He didn't want to do any of that. And he transformed himself into Antonio. And now he's writing to his aunt, who probably won't believe a word that he's saying, but, telling his aunt his adventures since he has left the convent. So he has been a mule driver, he has been a shopkeeper, he has been a soldier, he has been a cabin boy, he has been a conquistador. He has traveled all around Spain. Now he's gone into America, into the New World. But he will need one more transformation because he has deserted the army that he was serving, and he's now being pursued. Also because he has rescued 2 slave girls, and so he's now caring for them. And so to stay alive, he might just need one more transformation, one more metamorphosis. This is a queer historical fiction story starring a trans character. Supposedly, according to the description, is a searing criticism of conquest and colonialism, religious tyranny, and the treatment of women and indigenous people. It also supposed to take place in some sort of magical, surreal rainforest, which I am very excited to read about. According to author Samantha Schwablin, this book is so sharp, so urgent, and so brave. So I'm really excited about this, as I'm excited about pretty much anything that New Directions come out, and there's so many of them. I will not cheat and talk about all of them, but just check out their catalog. So this one is We Are Green and Trembling by Gabriela Cabezón Cámara, and it's translated by Robin Myers. All right, Miss Corinne, what have we got?
Well. We're back to true crime. There always has to be one. And this is an author whose book, The Wicked Boy, the story of the Victorian child murder, was genuinely one of the most life-affirming stories that I ever found. Yeah, a beautiful story of redemption. However, for this particular story, in this particular case, there is no redemption to be found. However, I do trust this author will bring her keen observation and dedication to really getting at the heart of the matter and centering victims in it. This is a very notorious case that I will not get into the details of because they are quite upsetting. So this is the story of Reg Christie. And if you're not familiar with him, I absolutely urge you not to Google and or Wikipedia him at all. The book is called The Peepshow, The Murders at Rillington Place by the Edgar Award-winning author Kate Summerscale. So it is March 1953, and we are in London. We are in the post-war era. And the police have been called to a dingy row house in Notting Hill called 10 Rillington Place. There, the police officers make a horrible discovery of the bodies of 3 young women. As they investigate this house further, they find more and more and more. What starts then is a manhunt for the former tenant of this place, where eventually they track down a former police officer, Reg Christie. Now, what makes this story even more upsetting is that there was a double murder in this row house about 3 years ago, and a man was hanged and found guilty. However, as these new things come to light, the police and journalists begin to suspect that it was Christie himself who orchestrated an innocent man going to his death. What I think Kate Summerscale is interested in exploring in this particular case is the media circus and the media frenzy that happened afterwards. She was really interested in going to the heart of true crime. True crime is nothing new. It's been around since we had printed materials to do. But what about it is appealing to people? And what about it was especially appealing to people after the war? Reg Christie himself was a new kind of murderer. He was vacant, impersonal, cold, uninterested. And she is not so much interested in him himself as the victims and digging into the archives in the same way that the book The Five dealt more with the victims of Jack the Ripper. She's interested in kind of looking in the archives and historical records to find out more about the victims whose story often got lost in the kind of tabloid frenzy of tracking down this murderer. She's looking at the truth of the story, the fixation with true crime, as well as looking at what really happened there and providing her own insight and solution. If you're a fan of true crime, not in the way that it was a kind of like a tabloid 1950s sensational thing, but more looking at kind of like the effects of it and the way that media manipulates stories of crimes to tell larger stories, Kate Summerscale is really the author for you. She does an excellent job at handling all the historical detail, as well as giving you kind of the context for understanding why and where this story was so interesting to people and why it has kind of continued to haunt the media afterwards. So if you're interested in a very sensitive handling of a story that if you know about true crime, you probably do know a lot about, but are really wanting to get a fresh new perspective on it, I would really recommend The Peepshow, The Murders at Rillington Place by Kate Summerscale. And The Wicked Boy, which I'm going to like sneak a backdoor recommendation into because it was really good. It was really good. Transformative. I cried at the end. Anyways, all right, we are going to swing this over to Sadie. We are really counting down the numbers. We only have one left. So Sadie, what's your top 2?
All right. So I saved these 2 for last because weirdly, they both compare themselves to one of my favorite YA fantasy series. So this first one says that it is Ninth House meets Legendborn in a thrilling first book in a dark academia fantasy series. So Ninth House I do enjoy as well. Everybody knows I love Leigh Bardugo. Ninth House series is probably not my favorite of her work, but Legendborn I have mentioned many times on this podcast by Tracy Dion. The 3rd book of that series, I'm going to put a plug out, just came out. It's sitting on my bedside table right now. I haven't had a chance to read it. It is about that thick, so I don't know when I'm going to get to it, but very excited about that. So anytime Legendborn is mentioned, I am drawn into it. I will say I do buy in. As I'm sure we all know, these comparisons are not always accurate, or some element of Legendborn is not included, and that element may have been one that I really enjoyed. So I don't know how this one is actually going to play out in the comparison, but that is okay. I am willing to give it a try. So this is called A Mastery of Monsters by Liselle Sambury. And Liselle Sambury is another author that I've had her books on my to read list a few times, and I haven't actually got to them yet. So maybe this will be the one that I do actually read. Okay, so this follows the story of August. And August has recently lost her mother. Not to death, but they don't know where she is. She's missing. Shortly after this, August's brother also disappears. He is in his sophomore semester at college, and everyone just assumes that the stress just kind of got to him. But August knows that her brother never would have left her, especially since they both just lost their mother. Now, the only clue that August has to where her brother may have gone, or the fact that he has gone at all, is a note. And the note tells her to stay safe and protect the rest of their family. August isn't really sure what this means. Stay safe from what? She has no idea. Then she is attacked by a 10-foot tall creature with fur and claws. And the note starts to make a little bit more sense. She starts to realize that her brother and probably herself might be in more danger than she originally had thought. So she starts to look for information to try to figure out what is going on, try to figure out where her brother has gone to, try to figure out why and what these creatures are. This search leads her to Virgil Hawthorne. Now, he is one of the only people who knows about these strange creatures. And the reason for that is because he is one. He is slowly losing his humanity and becoming one of these mindless creatures. And the only way that he can come back from it is if he can find a partner who can help him control this nature. However, he can't tell anyone that this is happening, because the secret society that he has grown up in, that he has been raised in, would immediately kill him if they found out what he was. So Virgil makes August a deal. He will help her find her brother, and in return, she will join the secret society to be his partner and try to save him from becoming one of these evil creatures. And so August doesn't really have any other choice if she wants to find her brother. This seems to be the only way to go about it. And so she agrees to compete in a competition to try and win one of the few spots to gain entry into the secret society. At the same time, she has to battle with the idea that monsters are real. Her brother may not be coming back. And if she has any hope of saving him, she's going to have to partner with one of the creatures that took him. So this does sound like a blend of those two books. Sounds very much like Ninth House. It sounds very much like Legendborn. So it'll be interesting to see kind of where those similarities actually, how far they go, how true to that they actually are. It sounds, I'm going to say this, and I mean this in a nice way. Maybe it sounds like too similar to Legendborn, so I'm a little bit worried that it's just going to be a copy of Legendborn. So yes, I'm curious to see what one is about. I'm excited to read it. I'm excited to dive into another urban fantasy set in the real world, lots of magic, secret societies, that kind of stuff, because I do love that kind of book. I am excited. This one comes out 29th, and that is A Mastery of Monsters by Liselle Sambury. So I will go to Virginia. What is your penultimate pick?
So the next book I pick entirely because of the title, because it contains a word that is one of our podcast fascination. It is our frequent mention of eyes, from leeches that comes out of eyes, from eye gouging, from not liking those magical eyes of different colors, and of course to Eric LaRocca's question of the day: what have you done to deserve your eyes today? So I feel like this book has the best title that I have seen this year so far. The book is called I Gave You Eyes and You Look Towards Darkness. And this is a book by Irene Solà and translated from Catalan into English by Mara Faye Lethem, a new to me author, but a translator that I really should pay more attention to. They do books from Spanish and also from Catalan. And the last two books that she has done, Napalm in the Heart, which I read last year, and also this year's, I think, the most banana books I read so far this year, called Fake Muse by Max Becerra. They were excellent. So good. And so I'm really excited. I should kind of look up more of the books that they translate. But anyway, this one is coming out on June 17, and it is by Grey Wolf Press. So shout out to Emma and your favorite small press. And so this book takes us to some remote village into a farmhouse. Also has a name. It's called Mas Clavel. And a very old woman named Bernadetta is on her deathbed. And Margarita is sitting by her side. And every time seems like Bernadetta has stopped breathing, Margarita will leans in and just to check. And after a couple of seconds, Bernadetta will suck in a new breath. And okay, so not quite yet. But Margarita wants to be there when the woman finally passes. Margarita has a way. There would not be a party when Bernadetta died. But everybody in the house is planning a big party. She thinks it should be more a solemn affair. It shouldn't be a party. Not like that party that she got when she died. Yes, Margarita is dead. And she still remembers the moment when she knows that she has passed. She was expecting trumpets and harp music and angels. And of course, the open arms of the Lord welcome her back into his kingdom. But nope, she opened her eyes and there were all these women in her family, all of them dead. Recently or a long time ago, her mother, Joanna, was staring at her and they were just dragging her down to this party that she wants no part of. And now they're all waiting for Bernadetta to die to join them so that they can also have a party. And as Margarita sit there by Bernadetta's side, watching the living coming in, coming out to check in on her, to attend to her. Of course, people that Margarita knows that she cannot interact with. This is the rule. You don't touch them. You don't talk to them. You don't even look at them. You just look away. She sits there and she remembers why she is stuck in this house and why her family is stuck here. It was all because of a deal with the devil that her mother has struck. Her mother, Joanna, when she was getting a little bit older, was getting a little concerned because there was no prospect. She wants a husband and there was nobody in sight. And so when she was complaining about this and talking about how she has prayed and the Lord hasn't answered her prayers yet, somebody suggested, well, when the one is not listening, why don't you turn to the other and try that? And that's what she did. She summoned the devil and asked the devil for a full man, a husband who maybe have a house, a patch of land. That would be nice. And the next day, a man showed up and asked for her hand. It worked. And on her wedding day, she discovered that her husband is missing a toe that has been eaten by wolves. So when the devil come to claim his prize, she was like, my husband is not a full man as I requested. He's missing a toe. And so she thought she has gotten the best of the devil. She found this loophole and she didn't have to honor the contract of the devil. But of course, it is not simple. So the story takes place over just one day, but we get sort of 400 years of history and legend of this family. I started reading a little bit of it and it's just full of really vivid kind of details. All kinds of as the description said, it was the house that reverberates with raucous laughter, pungent feasts, and piercing cries of pleasure and pain. And there was just so much vivid descriptions in this book. It's quite amazing. And it talks about what are the things that we remember, what are the things that we forgot, what are the stories that we tell, what are the myths that we believe in. This intergenerational kind of family, generational story. It sounds quite amazing. It's a fairly short book, but I'm really interested to kind of get to know Margarita and her family a little bit more. So this is I Gave You Eyes And You Look Towards Darkness by Irene Solà and translated by Mara Faye Lethem. All right, so our last round of books, we're going to start with Sadie.
All right. So as I said, this also compares the book to Legendborn, but this time it is Legendborn meets the Da Vinci Code. Now, I love the Da Vinci Code. I am a huge fan of the Robert Langdon series. I was very excited to learn that there's a new one coming out this year. I did not know that that was in the work. So yes, I'm a huge Da Vinci Code fan. I say I love the movie. I love the book. I have to say I love all of it. I'm a sucker for a good like historical coded mystery where you're trying to figure out these very clear clues and traveling all over the place. It's right up my alley. So this one definitely drew me in when it compared one of my favorite YA books to one of my favorite adult kind of thriller mystery kind of historical books. And so this is called The Art of Exile, and it is by Andrea Max. It is a YA, I don't know if there's fantasy. I guess, like YA fantasy, again, a dark academia, a little bit of history. And this story follows Ada. And Ada Castle, she's part of a very high achieving family. And she does not quite live up to the standards that have been set by this very high achieving family. She's always doing things wrong. She's always falling for the wrong guys. She's never really been that successful. But inadvertently, she has given herself the opportunity to prove herself by gaining access to a hidden school that her family has been trying to locate for generations. Now, she gained access to this school by accidentally going on a date with the recruiter without realizing it, being temporarily abducted, and then somehow managing to secure herself an invitation to the school. But how she got there doesn't really matter, because Ada knows that her family will finally be proud of her because she has been welcomed into the Genesis Institute. Now, at the Genesis Institute, descendants of exiled Renaissance masters are given the opportunity to practice long-lost arts and sciences. And to Ada, the school is a utopia. It has sustainable technology, medical advancements, and myths come to life that Ada never imagined. At this school, Ada is finally given the opportunity to prove herself, but also to figure out who she is outside of her family. Now, what Ada didn't realize at first, and what she slowly starts to realize, is that while this school has all of these amazing advancements, they are hoarding it all for themselves. And so Ada forms a plan. She's going to go undercover and steal these innovations for the rest of the world. But if she does that, then she will lose access to the place that has nurtured her creativity, has given her a different view of the world. And she can't help but struggle to make that decision. So Ada starts telling lie upon lie upon lie upon lie to her new friends and her new teachers. But this is all called into question when one of her friends goes missing. And to rescue her, Ada is forced to work with a dangerous classmate who is very, very suspicious of her cover story. Information that she shared with her family starts to come out, and it starts to put her missing friend and all of the Genesis Institute and herself in danger. And she will have to make a decision whether she will betray the family that she has been a part of and that she loves, or the school where she has finally felt like she belongs. So I think this is going to be a lot of action, a lot of excitement, a lot of probably romance, because that's just the way these books go. I'm hoping maybe a heist or two. It doesn't specifically say heist, but this is the kind of book that I feel like a heist would fit quite well in. So yeah, I'm hoping that there will be a heist in this one. And I'm really excited. It comes out in May, and so I don't have to wait too long to try this one. And maybe it will get me kind of primed and ready to read the new Dan Brown, Robert Langdon book when it comes out in the fall. So this is The Art of Exile by Andrea Max. All right, Karine, what is your final pick? I'm excited.
Do I have a heist for you? Oh, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm just going to tell you the title. And I think it says everything that you need to hear. This book is called The Great Chinese Art Heist. Imperialism, Organized Crime, and the Hidden Story of China's Stolen Artistic Treasures. Like, come on. Come on. This is by Ralph Pezzullo. And if you can't guess what it's about the Great Chinese Art Heists. What do you think? Again, I love something that's just like, this is straight up what this story is, and you don't need to really question it. So this is coming out on July 15th, 2025. And this is about like a very intriguing series of art heists that have happened starting in Stockholm in 2010, where a very kind of like elite, professional, well thought out gang of thieves broke into the Drottningholm Palace in Stockholm. So this is one of the official residents of the Swedish royal family. As they popped in to visit, they made off with a series of priceless works of art. However, on the security cameras, it seems as if they almost have like a shopping list of things, taking some priceless treasures, taking some that seem a little bit more innocuous. But what they all have in common is that they are looted Chinese treasures from the Second Opium War. So what follows after this is another series of heists in France, Great Britain, and other countries in Europe, all of them very specifically targeting these looted treasures. These heists include people rappelling down from ceilings, Mission Impossible style, using fire extinguisher to cover their tracks and footprints. Like, the problem is you can't help but cheer for them. You just can't. Most of these treasures and stuff were originally displayed in the Old Summer Palace outside Beijing nearly 2 centuries ago and were looted by the French in the Second Opium War. So this has led a couple of people to kind of wonder whether this is the work of organized crime, whether this is potentially the work of the Chinese government, whether there is a greater conspiracy at play, or whether it is just a collector with a very niche interest. What I think it is interesting, at least in the description, is that the author, Ralph Pezzullo, is taking a look back to that Opium War when all of these treasures were taken. And, you know, talking about the history of looting specifically from China, but this is kind of worldwide, of imperial powers and how that ties into the current art museums of now. You take a walk through any museum in Europe or in the United States, and as you're walking around, you have the overwhelming sensation when you look at some particular treasures of, why do you have that? Should you have that? I don't think that belongs to you. In the podcast, Andy Zaltzman and John Oliver often refer to the British Museum as the largest open crime scene in the world. And I think that that is fairly accurate. There is a quote by the art critic Holland Cotter who says, "The history of art is, in large part, a theft of history." I would argue that the history of art is the history of theft, especially in the modern world where, despite there being calls for repatriation or looking at the actual problems of items and where they come from, this has been a privilege only for a select few. Crimes from World War II, oftentimes there have been complex and costly legal battles for families to get their treasures back, where there is an absolute documented history of looting and stealing. However, this has been a privilege mostly in Europe, where treasures taken from various Asian countries have never been returned under the guise of these museums saying that they can take better care of them. So I am excited for this story. Whoever the culprits may be, it's hard. It's hard not to cheer for them. Especially when they're so dang efficient and cool. Come on, you're rappelling from a ceiling to steal some art. That's just cool. That's just cool. So I am very to kind of learn more about this series of art heists, to learn more about this particular history of these items. And again, the title of The Great Chinese Art Heist, like, one more do you need? It's going to be splendid. If you have your bingo card for Karine as a reader, I think you've probably gotten a bingo. I think you probably nailed it within the first episode, but here on the second episode, I decided to sneak in a little bit of art history, and Sadie and I have also provided a little bit of heist. So I think we have our last book of this episode. We have all gone through our top 3 except for Virginia. So Virginia, what is your last pick of this episode?
Well, you can tell how excited Corinne is, just how excited she is about that book, and also about Summer, just as how excited she is about Summer. So let's just bring it down a notch. Let's bring it back to the weighty feel of Summer, and let's go with like a possibly like a heart-wrenching weighty book, just to fit the vibe, the actual vibe of Summer, which is just weight. Anyway, so like my last book, this story also takes place in some remote village, which is kind of like what I feel like these days, a setting that I kind of like to like visit frequently. Is one of these like isolated places where you know that something like strange is going on, and that people have like weird beliefs, weird things that they do, and or like that's like the outside is terrifying, which it is, or like you get these like unreliable narrator, and you're not really sure whether you should trust them or not because you're not really sure what's real and what's not. And that's kind of, I feel like those kind of villagey settings are perfect for that. And I think longtime listeners also know that I am drawn to books that really talk about grief and like loss in a weird, unexpected way. So this book kind of combines all those things together for me. So this is called Tamangur, and it is by Leta Semadeni, and it is translated by Tess Lewis. Samandani is a Swiss poet and novelist, and this book actually won the Literature Prize in 2016 when it came out, and now we've got to get a chance to read it in English, and it's coming out on May 6th from Seagull Books. This is a story told through 84 vignettes, and it's set in the small village that is next to a what they describe as a mystical and mysterious forest, often considered more to be the realm of the dead. And we meet grandmother and the child, and a named girl that we just call the child. And they are both working through their grief. Grandfather has died and beloved by both of them. The child remember the smell of lilac on her grandfather. She's never sure whether it's just like why does her grandfather smell like lilac. The other thing that she also remembers her grandfather putting, okay, this is something that I really don't get, pouring coffee over cheese and eating it together. I really don't. I have to read it again. I read it like 3 times. I'm like, is this really what what? But anyway, like like he would do that, and then like grandmother will come to the table and we'll see like cheese strings on both of them, and she will just start to chastise them, and grandfather would just silence her with a kiss, and everything is fine. And so the child has really, really good memories of her grandfather, and when grandmother remembers grandfather, she will start saying something about him, and then she'll just stop, and she might stop talking for hours. She's lost somewhere, and the child always knows when grandmother is dreaming of her grandfather. The child is also mourning the loss of her little brother. Her brother has drowned, and she thinks it's her fault. And that is why her parents have abandoned her. That is why her grandparents left her with her grandmother. So as the two of them sort of explore their patchwork memories, trying to process that grief, we get just a little bit of lightness to the story from the eccentric cast of characters that live in the village. We have Elsa that comes over to visit every now and then. Elsa, who thinks she's married to Elvis, brings Elvis to dinner. Of course, nobody can see Elvis, but they always have a play setting for him. We have a seamstress who steals other people's memories and make them her own. I don't know if this is literally or metaphorically. I guess I will find out. There's a brooding chimney sweep that they call the Man in Black. And there's also a very, very rude goat. And no one knows why this goat is so rude. And they kind of form this family of sorts. Samandani's prose has been described as evocative and also blending the poignant with the absurd in a way that captures the heart and imagination. And I really like this description by the publisher because I think that's part of why I love absurdity, because it's sometimes, even though it sounds so ridiculous, there's just something about that really managed to get to the heart of things. And so I'm looking forward to this book. It sounds like it is going to be kind of like super sad, but also has a lot of kind of heart in it. I started reading a little bit and I just love the way grandmother tells a lot of story, like just the way she does her storytelling. And I think it's a great book for any readers who just want to sit with a couple characters and just listen to them talk. So looking forward to it. This is coming out in May. It's called Tamangur and it is by Leta Semadeni and it's translated by Tess Lewis. All right. So I think depending on what you're drinking, you should be quite drunk by now if you are playing on a bingo card. Because I feel like, I don't know, just we've hit so many categories. So yeah, I hope you are enjoying yourself now. These are just some of the books, some of the great books that are coming out this season. There are a lot more, and you will be able to find all these books on order from your library probably. You can, put them on hold and get on the waiting list. You'll be number 2 because we will all be number 1 on the list. So yeah, anyways, hope you have found some other books that you are looking forward to reading too, and do share those with us. And so we'll see you again next week on Keep It Fictional, and have a good time reading, whether you like summer or not. So
Thank you for listening. If you like our show, please tell a fellow book lover about it. You can find a list of all the books we discussed in our show notes. Join us next week for another fun book chat. Until then, keep it fictional.